our incredible president, Renee Barker, who is going to kick us off with an introduction. And then we're going to hear from Mary DuBose herself. So thanks everyone for being here. And as you have questions, drop them in the chat. We will ask them to Mary at the end of her presentation so we can have lots and lots of back and forth there. So thoughts, questions, drop them in the chat throughout the presentation. And I hope you enjoy this month's program. Take it away, Renee.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Renee Barker. This year, I'm currently serving as the TWIG board president, and just so happy that you're able to join us this morning. We're really, really excited about Mary here. I'll give a quick intro of her, and then we'll get started right away. So Mary DuBose has worked at CAESER, the Center for Applied Earth Science and Engineering Research at the University of Memphis. Jocelyn, show your shirt. For 8 years and is currently the Associate Director of Geographic Analysis. Through her role at CAESER, Mary advocates for geographic analysis as an important way to address environmental and societal issues. She will discuss the importance of geographic and environmental education in helping to create a community of informed and engaged citizens. Mary, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Renee, and thank you, Jocelyn, for inviting me to speak today. I'm so excited to be here. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and we'll jump right in. Not with the ending slide, with the beginning slide. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about environmental education, which is the key to ensuring sustainability for future generations. And as Renee said, my name is Mary DuBose, and I'm the Associate Director of Geographic Analysis at CAESER. So first, a little bit about what CAESER is. It's kind of a funny acronym. Everybody misspells it because we don't spell it like Caesar salad. But it is the Center for Applied Earth Science and Engineering Research. We're a multidisciplinary research center. We're based at the University of Memphis underneath the Herf College of Engineering. So what we do is we work with public, private, and government partners in both natural and populated environments with a mission to strengthen communities by improving environmental and social conditions through collaboration and research. So what that means in real life is we work with a number of partners, whether that's local government, such as the city of Memphis, Shelby County. We work with local utilities, and sometimes private companies as well. And we have 4 main focus areas: water research, geographic analysis, transportation and logistics, and then education and outreach, which kind of applies to all of those. And CAESER itself has only been around since 2015, but we actually formed from 2 other research centers at the University of Memphis that merged together. One of those was the Center for Partnerships in GIS, and then the Groundwater Institute, which has been doing groundwater research in the Memphis area since 1990s. And just a little bit about me and how I came into this role. So I was born and raised in Nashville. I'm a lifelong Tennessean, but now I've been in Memphis for the past 11 years. And I first came to Memphis to study at Rhodes College, where I studied anthropology and environmental science because I couldn't pick just one thing. I thought it was all so interesting and fun, and I loved the professors, and I loved getting to go on field trips for the environmental science classes. And that was a really great way to start to get to know Memphis and the work people are doing there. And through that, through my classes there, I got connected to CAESER and started working there kind of as a student job the summer before my last year of college. And I just never left. CAESER works with so many different areas, and we have so many different programs and projects that there's always been something new for me to learn at CAESER and new opportunities to take on leadership and do more great work around Memphis. So over the years, I've done a number of different roles. Some of that is with education and outreach, but my #1 favorite thing is geography. So I don't know how many of y'all on this call are familiar with Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, but I could talk about that all day long, but y'all probably don't want to hear that. So we will move on. So today I'm going to be talking more about water education and research. So when we're educating people about water, what are those primary things that we really want to get them to know? And then what questions are we still trying to answer? Because people sometimes ask us questions that we don't have the answers to, or we have an idea, but we're still kind of researching it. And then what specifically are we doing? What kind of programs do we have to address that? So the big question, where does your water come from? Every time we do an education program, we ask this question, whether it's to elementary school students or high school students, adults, we always want to know, do you know where your water comes from? And depending on where you are, the answer to that is different. So here's a map showing all of Tennessee, since I know we may have people from across the state on this call. So in the top map, all the blue circles are public water systems that use groundwater. So you see pretty much everywhere in West Tennessee, groundwater is the source. In East Tennessee, it's kind of mixed between groundwater and surface water. But then in Middle Tennessee, most public water systems use surface water, such as lakes or rivers. So you see just across one state, it's really different. The bottom map shows how much groundwater is pumped out per county per day. So some areas like Davidson County, Nashville, no groundwater. Shelby County, where I am, a lot of groundwater gets pumped out every day. Other areas, it's kind of a mixture. So the answer to that question, where does your water come from, is so local. So that's why it's important to be teaching kids from the beginning your local geography, what it's like where you live specifically. Because one of the #1 answers, just in terms of the wrong answers only, we'll ask kids, where does your water come from? And they tell me the ocean, which is wrong for a couple of reasons. Not only do we not want to drink salt water, we are hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean. The other wrong answer that I get a lot is the Mississippi River, which that makes me feel a lot better about it than saying the ocean. Because if a kid is saying the Mississippi River, they at least have some idea of their local geography. That's a real river that passes through our city. We don't drink that water, fortunately, but that's a lot more hopeful of a sign as to what they already know. The real answer, if you're in the Memphis or Mid-South area, is the Memphis aquifer. So I don't know how many of y'all already know about this or have seen a map like this, but here's basically what it looks like underground. This formed from a formation called the Mississippi Embayment. So 70 million years ago, there was oceans that reached all the way as far north as the southern tip of Illinois. And they left this formation. It's kind of like a bowl shape. In the map on the left, it's kind of exaggerated shape, so you can kind of see what it looks like more. But in real life, this formation goes underneath 9 different states. And it's formed of alternating layers of clay and sand. So the clay we think of as a confining layer, a confining unit, because water can't pass through it. And then the sand layers are what we call aquifers, which is just any formation that can store water and hold water underground. So you see there's 3 main aquifers underneath: the Memphis aquifer, the Fort Pillow aquifer, and McNary. And then at the very top, the Mississippi River Valley alluvial aquifer. That one is not used for drinking water supply. It is used for irrigation, especially in eastern Arkansas. But just within Shelby County, the Memphis aquifer and Fort Pillow aquifer are 2 water sources. And so we ask this question a lot. And when we ask people, where does your water come from? We hope they say the aquifer, the Memphis aquifer, Memphis sands. Even if they don't know how to pronounce aquifer, that's totally fine. But we wanted to figure out exactly how much people already know about this. So we conducted a survey last year at the beginning of this year. This was done by phone, mail, text message, online, and we reached 488 people filling out this survey just to get a representative sample of Shelby County. And the purpose was just to get a baseline and see what do people know currently about water and what are their opinions, so that we can see how that might change over time. So what I thought was a really great sign is 48% of the people knew the Memphis aquifer was our primary source of drinking water. Unfortunately, less than half of those people actually could define aquifer correctly, but still, any way you look at it, that's about 1/4 of the people who filled the survey out not only knew where the water came from, but knew what an aquifer was. So to me, that's a sign that our education that we've been doing is already starting to take effect. And also the increased coverage of water in the news media, I think, is another part of that. And so depending on how much somebody already knows about water, that really influences their behaviors and opinions about it, which is what we found in the survey. So we asked, what's your water source that you drink? So earlier we learned how much cheaper it is if you drink tap water every day instead of bottled water. But there's still a huge percentage of people who are drinking bottled water as their primary source. The majority did drink either just plain tap water or filtered tap water, which is promising. But what we found was the more that people knew about water resources, the more likely they were to drink tap water, which makes sense when you think about it. So a common reason to drink bottled water is out of fear. So if you're not sure where the tap water comes from or what may be in it, then you might choose bottled instead. So what's the second thing that we want people to learn and know about their water is how is it replenished? So we have this large aquifer system and we're pumping millions of gallons of water out of it. How does water get back into it? So the aquifer recharges through the outcrop region, which is actually where the sand aquifer reaches the Earth's surface. So we saw the map earlier where it was kind of a bowl shape. So where the edges of it reach up to the surface, the sand, actually, you can see it. So in that picture, they're out at our research site in Fayette County, and they're standing right on top of the Memphis sand right there. And so that outcrop area stretches through a large part of West Tennessee, covering most of Fayette County, and kind of going to the northeast from there. And then even within Shelby County, we know that there are some gaps or breaches in that clay layer that could be scattered throughout the Memphis area. And it's also possible for recharge to occur through there. So another trivia question that we like to ask people at our programs is, how old do you think the average age of Memphis water is? And they'll guess all kinds of stuff, whether it's 2 weeks, an hour, and then I have to tell them it takes longer than an hour to drive there in your car. But the real answer is 2,000 years. So the water moves slowly through the sand. And it takes on average 2,000 years for it to reach from the recharge area in Fayette County to underneath Memphis. But sometimes we do see water that's younger than that in our municipal water supply. So that's a huge sign that water is actually getting in through those breaches or gaps. And then people sometimes don't really know how the water gets to your house. So they understand the idea that we have wells and that's pulling the water up from underground, but then where does it go from there? So what's going on is the well will have an electric pump at the top. Back when we first started using water from the aquifer, there was so much water in it that the pressure just naturally would make the water spout up from underground, kind of what you call an artesian well. At this point, since we've pumped out so much over the past 150 years, it no longer does that, so we use electric pumps. From there, the water goes to the pumping station where it's treated in a number of different ways. So they aerate it, they pour the water in these towers over these blocks or rocks, and it kind of removes some of the dissolved minerals, which improves the taste and smell of the water. Then it goes through a sand filter, which you can think of the aquifer kind of like a sand filter already, but this just is a further filtration process. And then they add just a very few things to treat it. They add chlorine for disinfectant. They add phosphate, which is an additive that's required to prevent corrosion. So we've probably all read and heard about what happened in Flint, Michigan a few years ago. They were not adding the phosphate to their water supply like they should have, and that was one primary cause of what happened there. So if you do have lead pipes in your water distribution system or in individual homes, having that phosphate in there makes it less likely for them to corrode. And then the last thing is they add fluoride, since that's required by all municipal water systems. From there, they store it in underground reservoirs before it's pumped to your home or business or industrial facilities. And so that kind of helps people, especially kids, picture it, because we want to take them from thinking, oh, you turn on the tap, you turn on the faucet at your house and water comes out like magic. Well, it's not magic. It takes a lot of work and there's a lot of people involved in working on the whole system. And then we don't usually think about it. We take it for granted. And then when something goes wrong is when we learn about it. So this past February, when we had the big ice storms and snowstorms here in Memphis, there were so many water mains that broke because of freezing that the levels in these reservoirs went down so much that the pressure dropped in the whole system. Some people didn't have barely a trickle of running water, and the whole system had to be, we had to boil our water before drinking it because the pressure was so low that it left room for potential bacteria to get into it. So that I think was a wake-up call for a lot of people who were just used to turning on the faucet and having clean water come out. It's not quite that easy. It takes a lot of really smart people working on it to make it happen. So then what we're trying to figure out is, do we have enough water for future generations? So the number that our center director, Dr. Brian Waldron, always throws out is 57 trillion gallons. That's how much water we think is in this aquifer. That is such a huge number, you can't even hardly imagine it. So we have a lot of water, but we don't want to think about just, do we have enough water for our kids and grandkids? We want to think about, do we have enough water for hundreds of years in the future? A really promising sign is the average daily water use has actually been declining since the peak in the late 90s. And that's not just in Memphis, not just in Shelby County, that's actually all over the United States. And the two main reasons for that, one is just more efficient plumbing fixtures and appliances. So if you buy like a dishwasher or washing machine today, it's going to use a lot less water than something you would have bought 20 years ago. And the other reason is using technology to detect and fix leaks before they can release so much water. And so in those graphs on the right side, you can see the water levels are actually rebounding. So we've been pumping the water, it's been going down, And then with this decrease in water usage, some wells are actually showing the water levels are going back up, which is really promising, but we also need to keep researching this to see how much we're using and how it's getting replenished. And this just shows across the tri-state area of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, our public water systems. So that's Tennessee is that green bar on the very left. They don't actually use a whole lot compared to other uses such as irrigation or electricity. So this is groundwater and freshwater across the whole state. But when you think about water, it's important to not just think about municipal water, but also all these other uses as well. And then we also want to make sure the water is safe. So like I mentioned earlier, there are breaches or gaps in the clay layer that's protecting the drinking water aquifer. And that does allow water to move from the shallow aquifer, which is more prone to contamination, into the Memphis aquifer. And there's no way that we can know where all those breaches or gaps exist without a ton of research. So we are working on a lot of that research right now, trying to locate more of those breaches or gaps, because that can tell us two things. One, those may not be the best places to put drinking water wells. And two, those may not be the best places for industrial development. Now, there's nothing we can do about industrial development or operations such as dry cleaners that have already been there, but at least we can be aware of this for the future and maybe work towards not developing things right in those areas. And so then moving to how do we actually let people know about all this? So our big program is called Water on Wheels, WOW for short. It's a mobile learning experience focused on the science of water. Some of y'all may have had the chance to visit it before. We go to schools, festivals, events all around the Mid-South. It's a giant trailer that we converted basically into a water science museum. So there's interactive exhibits where you can learn about the water cycle, watersheds, water conservation, and then the source of your drinking water. So on the left there, those kids are learning about virtual water use. So I think we had a question earlier about that, about your average daily water use. That's showing you the indirect. So they're seeing how many gallons of water it takes to make a cup of milk or a bowl of rice or a hamburger. And let me tell you, it is a lot of water. And so kids are always surprised with that one because they don't think it takes a lot of water to make these products. But then we walk them through the whole process. So a hamburger is made from cows. A cow needs water and food to survive. So it kind of gets them thinking about the whole process and the whole story. And we don't just do school events for K through 12. We do lots of other kinds of public events and outreach, and they're all kind of targeted to specific audiences. So we have lots of events like festivals or Earth Day events that we participate in. And those are great because you can reach hundreds of people at a time. And you can really get people, a lot of people able to see this hands-on experience. So on the left there, that little girl is touching real sand from the Memphis aquifer. So that sand came from about 300 feet below the Earth's surface. And then when a well was being drilled, we got some of that actual Memphis aquifer sand to keep for programs. And so kids will touch the sand and think, oh, it's so soft. This is so cool. So it lets them actually picture it. And it moves it from being something abstract, like this is hundreds of feet under our feet, to something they can actually picture because they've touched it or seen it. And then we do some more targeted or smaller programs. So on the right there, that is a picture from one of our tour de aquifers. So we took a small group of people, mostly local officials or people who are already kind of working in the environmental field. We're taking them on a tour of one of the pumping stations. So this is where the water that gets pumped out of the wells is moved to this location. And we're all standing up in the aerator tower right there. So all that water is rushing down below our feet, and you can hear it, you can feel it. If you go in one of these aerator towers on a hot summer day, you can feel how cold the water is because being pumped up from underground, the water is naturally at a cold temperature. So that's amazing to me because being able to see this in real life, you understand it in such a different way than just seeing it on a screen or reading about it in a book. So that's really our goal, is to bring this hands-on education to people. So what do people think about water? You know, we want people to care about water. That's why we do all these programs and events. We try to make it fun and interactive. But what are people's opinions about it? So going back to our water survey results, we asked, do you think the government is already doing enough to protect rivers, lakes, and streams? So only 12% of the survey respondents think the government is already doing enough. So 29% don't really care one way or the other, but a majority of people disagree. They think the government needs to be doing more to protect rivers, lakes, and streams. And then what was really promising is 95% of people believe that clean drinking water is a human right. So I completely agree. I think it's a human right. And 95% are with us on that. I think it just comes down to what does that mean in real life and how do we make that happen? When it comes to being concerned about water. So Black residents and those who are in lower income brackets have higher levels of concerns about water issues than other residents. So that is very interesting, and I think it shows we need to do better to increase confidence in the water. We need to do better for everybody, not just in Memphis, but across the country. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that in 2015 and 2016, when I would be doing these programs, the number one question I would get is what happened in Flint going to happen to us? Regardless of the fact that the Memphis water system and Flint water system are nothing alike, people see these similarities between Flint and between parts of Memphis maybe, and they think this could happen here, this could happen to me. I don't feel safe drinking the tap water. I'm going to stick to bottled because I don't want my kids to be harmed. So that's why it's important not only to actually protect the water, but to make sure people know that we're protecting the water and to really have that transparency and confidence. I also thought it was interesting that people under the age of 44 had the lowest confidence in governmental protection of drinking water and surface waters. So that I don't really know the reasons or meaning behind that, but I think it shows that people may be becoming more skeptical of environmental regulations and do those actually work like they're supposed to. So I think it's a promising sign that people not only care, but they are wanting to ask further questions and maybe do their own research into it. So that's really promising for us because we want people to care. We want people to be asking those questions and be advocates for their own water. And that's really our goal with all of our programs and all of our education that we do. So with that, I'll leave you with this photo of our mascot. His name is Wally the Water Drop. And here he is on a field trip. I think that might be at the a conference in Middle Tennessee, I'm not sure. But he likes to go visit different spots and teach kids about water. So I'll leave it open for any questions. I think there's some questions in chat.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes. And first of all, thank you, Mary. Huge round of applause. Y'all can come on camera and applause, do the emojis. I know we got some emoji wizards in here. Wally is open to tour. Just throwing that out there, Mary, if we want to drop that in the chat, how we can get Wally to come to a fair near us. I'll make that happen. Lots of great questions, lots and lots of good discussion here in the chat. First one being, we had a question about, you shared that really interesting statistic about appliances using less water, being more efficient. Do you have a particular resource you can share or a link where we can learn more about that, the difference between appliances in the 90s versus today?
Yeah, I don't have it kind of like off the cuff right now, but I can email that to you, Jocelyn, and then you can maybe share some resources.
Yeah, I'd love to. And then the first question I got for you, which is interesting because we hear a lot of stuff about, things in our water, whether they're added or they get leaked in and stuff like that. Is there any consequence of drinking phosphate?
No, there's no health consequences. It doesn't affect you at all in that way. The concentration is low. It just makes it run smoother through the water. Through the pipes, sorry. Makes the water run smoother.
Interesting. And do municipal water filters remove microplastics?
That's a great question, and not one that I know the answer to. That would be a good one to research.
Gonna put that into another guest speaker, sounds like. But here's one that I think you can help us with. Can you give an example of how CAESER's research helped inform local or regional policy decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, it's all very local. All this stuff is hyper local. So within Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, they have 11 different well fields or areas where they pump the water out of. So we're currently working on projects where we are doing specific research projects on each of these well fields one at a time. And so one thing that we do as part of that is age dating the water. So like I said, the water should be about 2,000 years old on average. But sometimes we see water sneaking in there that's 20, 30, 50 years old. And so that is an indicator that there's one of those gaps or breaches right in that area. And so by doing that kind of research, we're able to share that with the local utilities, and then that can kind of guide them towards where to place new wells. So when they drill these drinking water wells, they don't last forever. They have a lifetime of maybe 40 years on average. And so when they're trying to decide where to place new ones, that kind of research can really inform where is the best place to put those.
It's really interesting. So one of our listeners today, she said her husband, my husband and I have one of those 5-gallon home water dispensers that we fill up at the grocery store. So where does this kind of treated distilled water come from?
It's probably from the same source. A lot of that is just municipal water. Distilled water has a very more specific meaning. They put it through an extra process to remove certain stuff. So some people may have different opinions on whether they want to be drinking the fluoride in the water, and so that can be a reason people might want to have a different kind of water. But I think that would kind of also depend on the store and like where exactly you're getting it from. But a lot of it does start out just as the municipal tap water.
And that rolls right into a question that we have. Are you seeing a movement away from fluoridation?
Yes, so all these things with fluoride, these are federal regulations. So it's not as if the Memphis utilities can just decide on their own how much fluoride they want to put in the water. It's not any different from Nashville or any other public water supply in the United States. So up until recently, the level, I think, was 1 part per million of fluoride. I mean, I have this somewhat wrong with the units, but the level recently decreased to, I think, 0.7. So the EPA, I'm not sure who exactly at the federal level is regulating this, but they are constantly doing research into what's the best level. And the reason for putting fluoride in the water is to reduce dental problems and tooth decay. But they're constantly trying to determine what's the best level to provide the most health benefits while not over fluoridating the water. So they research that and they provide guidelines, and then each public utility just has to follow those guidelines. But it has decreased recently in the past, I'd say 20 years or so.
Aha, gotcha. And I was thinking through it. So something you were talking about with the communities that trust public water versus communities that don't, you mentioned that lower income communities tend to distrust the public water, and so they tend to buy the bottled water. What we saw with our TWIG trivia, it costs 50 cents a year to just drink tap water versus $1,400 a year to do the bottled water. Are you seeing that that is on top of, all the issues that low income communities have to face? Now they're also paying $1,400 a year for water. Are you seeing any kind of compounding effects there with the public opinion survey?
Yes, and unfortunately, another piece of it is not everybody actually drinks 8 cups of water a day. So, we go to schools with these education programs and we talk to kids, and some of them are like, ew, water, that's gross. I don't drink water. So they're drinking like Gatorade, Coke, whatever is from a can or the vending machine or whatever. So sometimes they're just, not drinking tap or bottled water.
Oof, That means we got a lot of education to do, huh?
We need
Well,
to
we
make that more accessible so that people know from a young age that, hey, in Memphis, this water, you can drink it.
absolutely. All right. We've got a bit of a hot topic question for you. What can you tell us about the Byhalia pipeline and the possible consequences on the aquifer?
So I personally can't tell you much. I am not a PhD. I'm not a research professor. So those types of really specific questions about that would be best left to our center director, Dr. Brian Waldron. That's probably not the answer you're hoping for, but we have to be really careful with talking about these types of things that are such a hot topic, because if you say something and then it gets published or passed on, then we have to be really careful, because this is kind of specific scientific research that we're doing. And so if anybody does want to know more about that, our email address, our contact information is down at the bottom there. And our center director will respond to information requests as he's able.
Awesome. We will drop that in the chat so we can get all that information. So another question that we have, you mentioned that the aquifer is actually growing in water again, but there's a lot of headlines in the news about the world is running out of water, the next war will be over water, and there's actually a Supreme Court case between Mississippi and Tennessee over water. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so just in general, you're right about water being the next hot topic, and it's a big deal. We are very fortunate here in this part of the country. We are not running out of water. Other places really are. That's why the geography of this all is so important. If you look at climate change projections and how that's supposed to affect this area, Tennessee is projected to get rainier. So you may think we already have enough rain in Tennessee, but some areas of the world or of the country are projected to get drier, which is the opposite of what they need. So it's really so local. So running out of water is not really our problem here. We're at this point more worried about the quality of the water. And I'm also not allowed to say anything about any ongoing Supreme Court cases. So sorry.
That's fair. Don't want to get you disbarred. Here is a fun question. How do you know how old water is?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So they do the age dating by looking for specific like isotopes. And so what they're looking for is when they were developing like the hydrogen bombs decades ago, that actually released certain things into the atmosphere that were just simply not there before. And so you look at these isotopes and their half-life. And so then when you send the water off to the lab, they measure the levels of those. And the isotopes decay after so many years. And depending on the levels they're seeing in the water, that can kind of tell you the age of the water, whether it's 20 years or 60 years or however many years old. But we have to send it off to a lab to do that testing.
That is interesting. I got one in here. We got lots of comments coming into the chat. I love it. We got time for one or two more questions. So if you got a good one, definitely drop it in there. Mary, you mentioned GIS and how you could nerd out over it. GIS is something Julianne has always been interested in. For someone wanting to learn about it and get into it, are there any resources you could suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. So GIS can have kind of a big learning curve, and especially because one of the major GIS software companies, Esri, which produces the ArcGIS or ArcMap software, it's proprietary software. And if your school or company doesn't already have access to that, then the cost would be prohibitive if you're just someone who wants to learn it on your own. But a great alternative is called QGIS, the letter Q, it stands for Quantum GIS. It's a free open source GIS software. It has all the capabilities of the other major paid software, but it's completely free to download and install on your computer. And there's a ton of great resources out there online, like tutorials that can help you learn it. So that's absolutely what I would recommend for anybody wanting to learn more about GIS and get more familiar with it. There's example projects that you can follow through on your own, and lots of great people sharing resources out there online. Since with the paid software, you have access to this like helpline, but with a free and open source, you don't have that. So basically the whole internet is your help resource with learning and troubleshooting the software. So there's my little plug for open source software, QGIS. It's a great way to learn, and I use it all the time for our projects.
Plug for the internet. Mary, this is a question from me, a layperson. What is GIS? What do you use it for? Give me like like the top Wikipedia paragraph of what GIS is.
The best way I can explain it is it's maps, but on the computer. It's so much more than that, but an example of what we use it for is mapping underground gas service lines. So if you have like a scanned image and it shows you where something is in your life, we put those lines and points and shapes in the computer, so then you can click on it, you can query it. You basically have like an interactive map rather than just a paper map.
Gotcha. Maps. That's what I took away.
Yes, that is my number one, maps forever.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, one quick one, because we do have a minute. Any recommendations for GIS jobs?
Yeah, so a lot of GIS jobs tend to be with like local or municipal government. And a lot of those will like start hiring at like an entry level. And it might be things, like I said, digitizing infrastructure or like parcel boundaries. So I would definitely look at any kind of government job boards. Also Google the GIS jobs clearinghouse. That actually posts jobs from all over the world, not just locally. But some of those are remote positions. So it's a whole range again from like entry level to like senior positions there. And also get involved if you have a local GIS group. Like in Memphis, we have MAGIC, which is the Memphis Area Geographic Information Council. And so those types of groups will typically post jobs.
Amazing. And I'm going to say TWIG also has a job board. So as we get different jobs, we post those up on our website. If you know of any like those, Mary, if CAESER is ever hiring somebody that wants to get involved over in Memphis, Shelby County, we can definitely plug that on our job board, put it in our newsletter, but lots of great resources out there. Mary, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation this morning. We are getting so many great comments in the chat about how informative this was, how much we've all learned and enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing your time, your morning, your expertise with us. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great. And I hope to join future TWIG meetings. Never know how fun these are.
More Twiggies, the more the merrier. So now we're going to toss it over to Gracelyn Jones, who is going to give us our TWIG announcements. Gracelyn, I'm going to make you a co-host so you can give us the presentations.
Thank you so much. And Mary, thank you for that amazing presentation. That was really informative. So I think, based on the comments in the chat, everybody learned a lot. And it is a hot topic. It's very interesting and it's applicable to everybody that lives on this earth. So thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge with us today. And let's see if we can see that. All right. Can everybody see that? Does that look good? Awesome. All right. Well, it is June somehow. I don't know how that happened. We're halfway through the year, but welcome again to TWIG. Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see everybody's face. And yeah, we're making it right through the year. Our mission, as always, is to empower, inspire, and connect women who are committed to environmental sustainability. So thank you for helping us do that once again this year with your membership and your participation. Huge shout out to our sponsors, as always. Take a good look at this list. These are companies and organizations that are supporting an organization like TWIG, a small, networking group for women. So these are all great places to support. If your workplace is interested in becoming a sponsor, we do have more information on our website at TennesseeWomenInGreen.com/become a sponsor, or you could just go to our website, click become a sponsor under get involved. And thank you for starting or renewing your membership with TWIG. If you are new to TWIG, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can drop our general email in the chat, and then our board members, we should have a little signifier on our Zoom names, but it's just our first name at TennesseeWomenInGreen.com. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram. We're still all virtual, so find a way to connect because that's what we're here for. So please feel free to reach out. Some upcoming events. So on Wednesday, June 9th at noon, the Construction, Demolition, and the Restore webinar will be hosted by Urban Green Lab. So tune in to learn about some of the work being done to close the C&D waste loop, construction and demolition. And I know we've had a few speakers come to TWIG to talk about that C&D waste loop. So it's a very important topic globally, especially in Nashville, because we have so much construction going on always. So tune in, that will be very informative. On Tuesday, June 22nd at 4 p.m., the Nature Conservancy will be hosting a webinar called Trail Cam 101. Terry Cook, the Tennessee State Director, will be having a little introduction on what trail cameras are, how to set them up, and how you can use them in your own backyard to, just catch some little wildlife, some little guys living in your backyard. That's always fun. On Wednesday, June 23rd at noon, Urban Green Lab is also hosting a creative reuse webinar, so you can learn more about steps you can take to reuse and about some local organizations that are leading that change. And then, of course, mark your calendars for our next monthly program on July 2nd with Alana McKissick. She's with Keep Knoxville Beautiful. That will be an amazing presentation, networking at 7:30, and the program begins at 8. So you can find out, as always, more information about all of these events, as well as a bunch more on our website, on our calendar. So Tennessee, Ten Green Land Conservancy is hosting a hike-a-thon through the month of June. So you can form a team, hike, paddle, cycle, trail run, just get outside in general, and you can win prizes. So that's always fun. So message Leah, Leah, at TennesseeWomenInGreen.com if you're interested in joining our TWIG team. And thank you so much for everybody who came out to help build garden beds for the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you, Jocelyn, for leading that effort. That was so much fun, very productive day. And I'm just so excited to see what the kids do with them. So yeah, we'll have updates for you, but it was a super fun day. So thanks for coming out, everybody. And we do have t-shirts. I'm wearing one right now. It's super comfy, super cute. I wear it all the time. I mean, I live in it basically. It's so comfortable. So email marketing@TennesseeWomenInGreen.com to pre-order a shirt. And we're doing a porch pickup. And just let us know the size and color you would like. So anyone registered for this meeting can grab a free coffee at Ugly Mugs in East Nashville. Just mention TWIG, and that is courtesy of the Green Interchange. As always, thank you for spending your morning with us. So good to see everybody. Mary, so good to hear about what you do, and all that amazing information. Discover more at TennesseeWomenInGreen.com. We do encourage everybody to invite 1 or 2 friends that you think would benefit from our next program to our next meeting. The benefit of being virtual is that anybody anywhere can join us. So the first couple programs are free. You don't have to be a paying member. So just invite your friends. We'll have a big old party. But yeah, y'all have a great rest of your month. Thank you so much for being here. Again, please feel free to reach out. See you guys soon.